Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the High Noon Hot Seat. I am your host, the Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much. What's going on?
And joining us again today is the one and only, the GM for Team USA Overwatch World Cup team, Bearhands. Welcome back, buddy.
Thanks. How's it going?
It's going well. Making a lot of appearances. Doing a lot of work this week. Obviously, you got your plate full with Overwatch World Cup and a little maybe an around the payload appearance as well. Um, but yeah, so thanks a lot for coming on. I know the fans have been telling us for many months now. Actually, it's been more than a year, right? Since you did the original interview. It was before BlizzCon. It was like right before BlizzCon, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So
It's been close.
it's been over a year, and the fans have been asking for you back. So we got him, and we're continuing the hot seat series here today. So let's just start it out hot. This is the question that I'm sure you've been asked 10,000 times. Even I've been asked it a bunch because people know that I know you at least in some capacity. So we'll just put it out there. What can you tell us about parting ways with NYXL?
Yeah, I mean, I think NYXL and I just agreed that it was in kind of everyone's best interest for us to part ways. It's all totally amicable, and we still have a good relationship. I've talked to those guys a few times since I left, and they're super cool. I've always been a big fan of those players and that organization, so I'm going to continue rooting for them, and hopefully they'll have a good run in the playoffs. I think they'll do pretty well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are definitely will definitely be rooting for them until the Overwatch World Cup, in which case I hope they lose every match, at least against the USA. But jump in. Let's jump in and talk more about the Overwatch World Cup event. Death, you want to take these ones?
Yeah, and real fast, I just want to say I'm from a personal perspective, I'm almost glad you left NYXL because I like to make fun of them for the Blevins' sake. So I feel like I'm not making fun of you anymore. So from my perspective, thanks. But I have to disagree that it was in their best interest to let you go. But yeah, moving on, we'll talk about the World Cup a little bit here. And I just want to get a little definition. There's a lot. It seems like in Overwatch League, especially, there's some varying degrees of, what being a general manager means. So for the Team USA gig here, can you describe kind of your primary function and your role within the team?
Yeah, sorry, my dog's freaking out. So if you
We
hear
love
some
dogs.
barking in the background, yeah, but I think you're right in terms of Overwatch League. Like every team kind of defines the role of general manager a little bit different. Like some teams don't even have someone in that position. With Team USA, I think it's primarily working with Blizzard to make sure that all of our players and the team sort of accomplishes all of the milestones that are set up in terms of not just showing up to the matches on time, but like completing any kind of media requirements or interviews or anything like that we have. And then also obviously like working with Arrow and the rest of the committee to build the roster and decide who we're going to invite to tryouts and all of that sort of stuff. I'm super involved with that. And then beyond that, I think all of us, the committee together, has just been kind of sort of brainstorming and trying to come up with some cool ways that we can engage the fan base and the American audience.
Excellent. Now, we know you have a little bit of experience about, in building a team, and with that being part of your role, rumor has it you've done a good job in this role in the past. So I'm curious if you can describe a little bit your philosophy around building a roster and how you go about starting from scratch and coming up with a competitive team.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a case-by-case situation in which you're going to sort of adapt your philosophy to whatever situation you're in. I think with building Team USA, like that situation is that we're sort of specifically looking at American players. And just the player pool that presents, presents some sort of unique challenges and opportunities that I didn't sort of run into when building NYXL or XL2. For example, like the number of support players in the United States is like a lot smaller than the number of DPS players, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like deciding which support players we were gonna invite, like I don't know that it was more difficult because like I say, there's a fewer number of people. It's just because there's a fewer number of people, there's also a fewer amount of players that are sort of at the top of the talent list, right? Whereas with DPS or even with main tank, I feel like it's a little bit more like an embarrassment of riches.
Now, there's no complete teams out there made up of only U.S. players, at least at the Overwatch League level. But I've got to say, there's one I like that's pretty close. Now, did you give any thought to maybe, using a full roster to kind of be the core of the team, or was that something you didn't consider?
It's not something that as a committee we ever really discussed. Frankly, like at least Arrow and I specifically were pretty much on the same page when it came to deciding what players we were interested in and like who we were going to invite to the tryouts and stuff. And like if you look at the players that have announced that they're part of the tryout process, I think there are a few players from the Outlaws that are part of the process. So I don't think we necessarily looked at bringing over a full team to sort of preserve that team chemistry, just because there's not like that team doesn't exist that's made up of completely Americans that are playing it at the highest level.
Fair enough. All right. So moving on here, we touched on it briefly, but can you talk about a little bit more about your relationship? Obviously you talked about Arrow and, we've got the community lead as well. Oh my God, I'm blanking on it.
Annalyn,
yes. Can you talk about how you plan to work with them as the process goes on, maybe all the way up through the actual event itself?
Yeah, we've already been working super closely together. We have a couple of Discords. One is sort of just the people involved in the tryout process, and then one is more public for Team USA fans and stuff in general. So we're using both of those Discords to stay in really close communication. All of the committee members and I, have been using it on a daily basis. We talk to each other. We had lunch together the other day and just kind of talked about some of our plans. And we do have some big plans and some exciting stuff that we'll hopefully announce pretty soon.
All right. Now, we got to clear the air a little bit here. Now, rumor has it last year at the World Cup, you seem to own one World Cup jersey, one World Cup team jersey. I don't know that it's a USA jersey since only me and Blevins are currently wearing them right now. Is that the team you see as your biggest threat? I mean, it obviously probably is, but are there any others that you consider as a big threat to the United States team?
I mean, obviously you're referring to Team South Korea right now.
I don't like to say their name out loud.
I don't know that I would look at them as our biggest threat right now, just because the way I'm looking at it is like focus on the group stage. And I just, I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse, so to speak. And South Korea is not in our group. So I think right now, like my biggest focus is probably Team Canada. There's actually a few teams in our group that are pretty strong. I think the favorites to make it out of the group are probably us in Canada. So I think that's where our focus is going to be right now strategically.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely... But at the end of the day, you still got to be, even if it's further out, you still got to be at least thinking about South Korea for sure.
Sure. And I mean, to be honest with you, I think that this meta, assuming it holds until BlizzCon, like I think is pretty conducive for the United States and gives us a pretty good shot. And like, I definitely think we have a chance to beat South Korea. Like that's why you play the games, right?
Right.
It was close enough last year, I think, that you got to clearly think.
Like, I think there were a few teams that gave South Korea a pretty good run for their money at BlizzCon last year.
Yeah, and now Overwatch League is just upping the compete level across the entire scene, regardless of country or nationality. That doesn't matter here. Everybody that's there is just improving at such a level, all the coaches, everybody. So I think we're going to be in for a really good run this year.
Yeah, I just want my biggest goal for BlizzCon this year really is to get a better bracket than we had last year.
Yeah, that's fair. Mine's to go, but I get there's different levels.
I want to get more of those delicious gummies at the BlizzCon arena, but that's a different conversation to have altogether. We have a community question here in from Kyle Wynn, and this kind of ties in to the question before. This one is, he wants to know what teams, or maybe even just players, are kind of sleeper picks for this year, or are maybe under the radar for the public.
In terms of World Cup?
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke a little bit about Brazil, who I think is going to be a really strong team in World Cup. I'm just pulling up the list of the teams that are broken up by by stage right now, and the other teams in our stage are Switzerland, Norway, Austria, and Canada. I think Norway will likely have a strong team. I'm assuming that Decot is going to play tank for them. I think he's a strong tank and will do well for that team. They looked pretty good last year. I also think teams like Spain and China are probably going to do very well. I know Russia sort of had a disappointing year last year. Like, if you remember the first World Cup, they played in the finals against South Korea.
Yeah.
And last year they did not qualify for BlizzCon. I think they missed it by one game. So, you know, that's a really competitive group again this year. They've got Finland, South Korea, obviously, Japan, Hong Kong, and Chinese Taipei in their group. So I think the favorites to come out of there are probably South Korea and Finland, but I would put Russia right there, and maybe have an opportunity to upset Finland.
Yeah, that would definitely be something. I mean, that starts to create the, like, we're now in multi-year, like, sagas at this point, where, like, the rise and fall of Russia, maybe we see the rise again. So that would definitely be an interesting one for sure. Now I want to talk a little bit more about the team and that whole process. So you guys have a very I'll say interesting and unique approach to the teams. You have the 4 different squads that all have the Mount Rushmore heads as the name. So I just want to know who came up with that idea to use the Mount Rushmore heads.
The Mount Rushmore heads is a great idea. That was our community lead, Annalyn.
Nice.
We had the 4 teams broken up, and we were trying to figure out some way to name them that wasn't just like Team 1, 2, 3, 4, Team A, B, C, D. And initially we had like Team Red, White, and Blue, but there's not, you know, we have 4 teams and only 3 colors, right? So she was like, oh, there's 4 people on Mount Rushmore. Like, this is perfect. And it was just a great idea that hit the ball out of the park exactly.
Yeah, it's just it's so spot on. It's so perfect.
You think you would have gotten there, Blevins?
I'm going to say I would have gotten there, and actually I would have done an even better job. So when we're voting, okay, I'm not going to start my campaign yet.
I really like how the players on those teams have sort of embraced it and like tweeted out pictures of those presidents, and like Adam's done a really good job of that stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, that's really awesome. That's just a great idea. The credit where credit's due. It's just I would have done a 1,000 times better job. I would have done the best job. Let me tell you. Okay, not going down that. Not going down there. Pull out the hat. Not doing it. We talked a little bit about this, Scott. But you know, obviously the picking the players was. I mean, at the end of the day, that falls on you and Arrow. So were you like super hands on with picking the players, or was it you and Arrow together? Like, how did that go?
Honestly, man, like, if I hadn't seen this go down, I don't know if I would have believed it myself. But like, Arrow and I just 100% completely agreed on who we needed to invite and who should be part of this process. And like, honestly, I think there were 1 or 2 players that we swapped out of the 25 that we invited. But for the most part, like, we've been seeing eye to eye on roster selection.
Now, in that vein, what if there was one player that he was like 100% needs to happen, and you're just like, no? How do you think you would have resolved that dispute?
I don't know. It's hard to say because like every interaction that I've had with him has just been the complete opposite of that.
Yeah.
Like, we've just agreed and been on the same page so much that it's hard to even imagine how I would handle a situation. But I mean, I think it would just come down to us having a conversation about it, and I think we're both pretty reasonable in terms of that sort of thing. So
probably just bring them into tryouts, and if it doesn't settle itself from watching them play, then you just
exactly.
Talk it out.
Really hoping there was like an interesting like clause in the Overwatch World Cup bylaws that all disputes have to be like done on like 1v1 on King's Road, just like.
So I mean, if you want to bust out the rules, the way the rules specifically say is I think everyone in the committee has an equal say in who's on the team, and if there are any ties, I think I have the tiebreaker as GM. But like, we have never been in that situation, and I can't imagine us ever being in that situation.
Well, that's good for the sake of the team, but just, I was really just hoping for some more not turmoil, but just like, I don't know, something crazy. But yeah, I guess you can't.
Yeah, I just don't have anything like that to report yet. I'm sorry.
All right, so since my dreams of an Outlaws team are dead, I'll take the hat off, and we might as well talk about Jake was one of the players that was invited to be a part of the tryout process, and he actually declined his invitation to try out for the team.
Yeah.
He implied there was something coming. Any insight into the reasoning? I mean, we all kind of have a guess. I think it's a popular guess, but have you talked to him about it? Do you know anything about why he said no?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna announce anything for Jake, like that's on him, obviously. But we had an inclination that we had I think everybody in the committee kind of knew that there was a pretty good chance that Jake was gonna not participate as a player in Overwatch World Cup, and honestly, I think that's why you see 25 invites instead of 24, is because we broke them up into 4 teams, and we sort of expected Jake to decline.
Gotcha.
But it's Jake, right? So we're gonna send him the invite anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Now, there's one player here that I think is very, very popular in the community, and that we're not really seeing in the list. That is Siegel. He's not on any of these teams. Was there any reason? Was he approached, or was he not somebody that was included or invited, I should say?
I hate to get into specifics about specific players in terms of like who's invited and who's not, and why is this player invited and why is this player not. When it comes to Siegel specifically, I would say, if he wants to make some kind of announcement about his involvement in Overwatch World Cup or lack thereof, that's kind of on him. But our policy in terms of the players that have been invited for Team USA this year is kind of just speak for yourself. And if you want to put that out there, that's on you. And if not, that's totally cool too. And when we get to the list of players that are going to be traveling to an event, we'll make an announcement about that and give you some more clarity. But in terms of Siegel, like I wouldn't want to put any words in his mouth one way or the other.
Gotcha. So I will be writing up my tweet about why I was not invited to the Overwatch World Cup team, and I'm gonna air out that dirty laundry.
Honestly, there are some players that like were kind of like on our list, but just didn't quite make the final 25, and we saw him tweet out pictures of like Bill Clinton, just as a joke. This is not a team, Bill. Like, I don't know. I just thought that was funny.
That is pretty funny. I like that quite a bit. Now, maybe we can get Blevins like a quick audition. Blevins, you want to practice your peanuts popcorns line for him, just in case they need a concessions guy or something like that?
Oh, yeah. Get your popcorn here. Get your peanut popcorn. $5 for $1. See,
I mean, it's pretty good, right? That's pretty good.
I can do like old time. I got it. I got it down.
He's got quite a range, a lot of variety in his play style as far as his concession game is concerned.
Yeah, no, so if you want someone to actually play Overwatch, I am the last person. Actually.
Keep him in mind, though. People need peanuts. That's definitely
for sure. I'll make a note.
I'll need peanuts because I'm going to be there rooting you guys. So. Moving on, we've got a couple more community questions we want to ask you, and the first one here comes from the Monkey Prince from our Discord. The Canadian team or committee has decided to bring in a little bit of an extra coaching staff to help out with the team. Do you plan to stick to that as well, or do you plan to do something similar to that as well, or are you sticking with the 3 members of the committee?
We haven't discussed bringing in any additional coaching staff. I'm not personally opposed to it. I don't particularly see the need for it either. Like, I think if that's something that Arrow decides would benefit the team, like I wouldn't be opposed to it at all, but it's not something that we've discussed.
Gotcha. But if you need like a VOD recorder or anything like that, your boy Deathblow's got your back. You just, you got my Discord. You just hit me up.
We're actually not even recording. This was just a plea for both of us.
We're just trying to shoehorn our way into the process
selling
here.
Peanuts and recording VODs.
Yeah, 100%. We know our role, and they're not big roles, but we want to help it.
If
anyway.
you want some big rolls, get them $5 for $1. Hot off the okay.
$5 for $1. That's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I mean that's just what I say. That's not how much they actually cost.
You just lost the job because you just cost Team USA so much money by selling things
20
too
cents
cheap.
for a big roll.
Right, you gotta up the price by like 600% at these events. Come on. We wanted to talk to you a little bit as well. This is from the Monkey Prince again, but how did you choose the format for tryouts? And maybe you can tell us a little bit. I mean, we know we've got the 4 teams. Are they playing in like a tournament style thing against each other, round robin? What's going on here with these teams?
No, I think the 4 teams are just a way for us to kind of divide the player pool that we're working with. It's not a tournament format. Players are not locked to the teams that they're currently assigned to. In the initial invitation email that I sent out to all the players, it said that we'll likely be switching the teams up during the course of the tryouts. there was some confusion about that early on. Like people thought that we were having some kind of tournament to determine who Team USA is. That's not the case at all.
That would be
We're just
cool.
gonna
I'd
use
watch
the
it.
scrims. Yeah, it would be awesome to watch for sure. But I think the goal is to just use the scrims to kind of see how players interact with each other and how they communicate with each other. In terms of like who can click on heads and stuff, like I don't feel like 1 week worth of scrims is going to sort of override the last 2 years of us all watching these players play. So it's not about finding out who's good. Like we should already know that, right? It's about finding out who can play together and who can coordinate their attacks and who can communicate and that sort of thing. And I think that's the biggest value that you get out of scrims at any point. And that's really what we're using this process to do, is to determine who can play together as a cohesive team.
Yeah, definitely. You see a lot of that even in Overwatch. Like some teams have like changed some shot callers around, and it's really not really worked out too well for them in the long run. They just haven't been able to adjust to it. So definitely seems like it's really beneficial to identify that stuff. And like you said, switch people around so that you see how certain players react to certain shot callers, stuff like that. So,
and from an outside perspective, it's really hard to sort of judge that when you can't hear team comms. And honestly, even when you can hear team comms, like that's one of the more difficult aspects of sort of scouting Overwatch talent is determining how well players can coordinate and communicate.
Gotcha. Well, I've got one more here, and then I'll let Blevins wrap us up. But it's a question from Deadly Teddy, again, another Discord guy. After working with some of the best Korean players in the world with NYXL, do you have any insight on how to help the USA team defeat them this year? Like, do you think you have inside info on these guys that will be from NYXL on the Korean team that might help the USA team?
I mean, it's hard to say at this point, not knowing who South Korea is going to field on Team South Korea. I mean, I want to say yes. Like, I want to say that my time with NYXL has given me some insight into their strategic overview, let's say. But honestly, I think that anyone that sort of evaluates that team's footage at a high level and kind of understands the intricacies of their strategy probably has that same level of insight. Like, it's not like Wizard Hyung and Pavane were, you know, pulling me into practice meetings and being like, this is the secret formula. Like, that's just not, that's not what it is, you know? Like, NYXL is just the most coordinated team in the world.
So it sounds like if I'm writing the Reddit headline for people, you in your head have the key to unraveling Jonak and to bringing him down to just being a regular human being on Zenyatta.
I mean,
that's what I'm going to tell myself to psych myself up for the event.
I don't
so
think
just
there's
don't directly
unlock the Jonak. Like, I think he just has basic mechanics that you know he uses. Like when you watch him peek around a corner and release a right click, like he doesn't peek for longer than he has to get that shot off. And if you watch other Zenyatta players do the same thing, like the window of their peak is a lot bigger, which means that they have a much better chance of getting picked off. And it's just small things like that that add up that make Jonak the great player that he is.
Yeah, but Zen only fires like what 5 projectiles there, and he kills 7 people every time. It's not fair. I don't like
he just knows those angles better than most Zenyatta players.
Yeah, it is a treat to watch him, and it's going to be a treat to watch USA destroy him in the World Cup, hopefully. I mean, that's if South Korea even makes it to BlizzCon. Who knows?
Right, if they make it to BlizzCon.
Right.
That's true. Maybe Bearhands leaks the key to unlocking him, to the group stage opponent.
Right? It's make sure you shoot corners because
just destroy the corner so he can't hide behind it. I mean,
I'm sure Taimu didn't know that at all. So when he plays South Korean group stage, he's going to be like, "Oh, now I can win."
Hey,
right,
Taimu,
we'll send him.
Welcome. Got another viewer question here from Splice Mace. He kind of talked about this a little bit, but kind of a two-part question here. What do you feel is the most challenging role to fill for Team USA? And then the follow-up of which role was more of a shoe-in? And you kind of talked about it a little bit, but can you go a little bit deeper in that?
Yeah, again, I would say I think the most challenging role to fill for Team USA was flex support. And it's just because, like, I think the number of people playing that position in the United States is so much smaller than the number of people playing DPS. DPS, I think... it was kind of hard to make that decision just because it was hard to narrow it down to 4 guys. Whereas with flex support, it was like, wow, we have to find 4 guys. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, there are more than 4 good flex support players in the United States, but that number is just a lot smaller than the number of good DPS players.
Yeah, at some point you need the ones that can stand toe to toe with Jonak, like we talked about. Like, you need those guys that belong on that stage.
I don't know who that guy is.
We haven't seen him yet, but we need to find him. That's your job. That's why your job's hard, Barry.
Yeah,
we just get to talk about it.
I'm just saying, Jonak, that dude needs to hit me up on Twitter.
I mean, I'm a Zen main. I'm just saying. You didn't ask. I can show you. I got tape. I can show you.
You killed Numlocked. You killed Numlocked.
That's true. With a mercy pistol, no less.
Yeah.
And he was diva.
That fact is getting less and less impressive as the. Okay, well, we're not going to go down that rabbit hole either.
How dare you? That's my red stapler, okay? You can't take it from me.
No, I still think that there's no one that gets that reference except for
that's
us.
Fine.
I don't care.
That's fine. We like
the red
it enough.
stapler thing. Office Space,
well, yeah, that's true. But we went so much deeper than we had a whole.
Our car ride to PAX, we like wrote a whole script for like a play or something. Yeah, like it was a screenplay for
you
Overwatch.
Guys should perform it
someday, but we'll probably never
going to be doing it BlizzCon. Last one here comes from Nano Boost. Did you think? So obviously you had some trouble with maybe the flex support, and there was a little bit less trouble with DPS. But the format of the 24 players, so the 4 teams, do you think that limited the amount of talent that you can actually get to, or are you confident that the 24 people that you have are the best 24 for the job?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident that the people that are participating in the tryouts are the people that will ultimately lead to the strongest Team USA that we can have. That having been said, I'm sure that there's someone out there in Mississippi or something that has never played on a tier 1 team that is, just an incredible flex support player or whatever. Like, that guy is out there and just hasn't been scouted yet. He's 14 and in junior high, and I've just never heard of him. But that's kind of the exciting part about the competitive Overwatch scene is that over the next couple of years, like, somebody's gonna find that guy, and we're gonna see him on the stage in Burbank, and maybe he can go toe to toe with Jonak. I think discovering those kind of people is one of the most exciting things about this whole thing.
Yeah, he might be 14 and in junior high. He could be 31 and have a podcast. You just never know. It could be literally anybody.
That's right.
Yeah, it could be literally. It's definitely not me. Okay, that's gonna bring us to the end of our planned questions here. If anyone, we do have some people in chat, so if anyone has a question, real quick, you can throw it in there. I do want to point out that I think it was Monkey Prince pointed out right when we went live that this is the most beardly we've had an episode, I think ever. I don't know if we've ever had more beard on the episode than this.
Pretty good.
I'm trying to think. I don't remember all the Florida Mayhem player, but if we had like Zebosai, that would be a little more beardly.
We had Logix, who is and we had Mineral, who I think had a little bit of a beard. We had we did have Fraggy, but he had like
Fraggy's pretty good.
He had just like shaved his beard down. He like the week before he was like super long beard.
Yeah, I used to have a crazy long beard. Like back when I was at Blizzard, it was seriously like down to here.
Well, I've never seen that, and I would like to. So we'll have to no shave till BlizzCon. I'm literally This is the same beard from last BlizzCon when we were planning on trying to go, and I couldn't. So this is that literal same beard. So no shave till BlizzCon. That's the high noon rule. But we do have a question in chat here that I wanted to try to get to you from Personal Matthew. You may not be able to answer this, so obviously just plead the fifth if you need to. But he's curious about the pay for the players in the World Cup. Are these players compensated, or is that just they get to go there and stay near BlizzCon for free, or how does that work here?
No, there's some compensation. It's basically each team gets a specific amount that's divided up equally amongst the players and the committee of that team. And then if you qualify for BlizzCon, like there's another amount so it's basically by event. Like you get X amount of dollars for playing in this event, which is the group stage, and then if you qualify for BlizzCon, like there's another set amount that is assigned to each team.
Oh, nice. Gotcha. That's good. That's good to know that not just doing slave labor. Even though I mean I gladly would do it for slave labor. Just so
And,
you
like,
know,
if you
Blizzard,
want more details, I think it's all in the Overwatch World Cup rules that have been published. Like I think I think it's all in the specific rule book. Like it even tells you the prize amounts and stuff.
I always look at those things and then I just like get to the money section and I'm like, well, none of it's for me, so I don't care. So I never think to look at it myself.
Yeah, I've worked on these rules a bunch of times. Like when I was at Blizzard, I would work with the legal department to get the rules written, and this is the first time the like does apply to me, so it's kind of cool.
We do have another question here in chat from High Five T-Bone. You will be able to purchase World Cup jerseys, I'm sure, as Blevins and I are sporting the ones that you were able to purchase last year. Again, Bearhands only owns a South Korean jersey.
That's not true. I have a China jersey. I have a Norway jersey.
Oh, yeah. And here it is. Here's the.
Yeah, I noticed that.
There it is.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Only some.
So if you guys haven't heard this story, he was wearing this T-shirt like at BlizzCon last year, just wearing it around like it's no big deal.
It has
and like
all of
we're
the...
drinking, and somewhere through the night, like I noticed it says "leave," and I'm like, "What? Leave?" And then I see Eileen, and I'm like, "Oh, dude, that's Team China. Like that shirt is signed by all of Team China." And he had no idea. I was like, "Where'd you get that shirt?" He's like, "What are you talking about? Somebody threw it to me in the crowd." I was like, "That shirt is signed by Team China." And he was like, "Oh, cool." And then
this was at like literally 3 a.m. Like I had been wondering why everyone, including Kiki, the Overwatch community manager, had like made a big deal about my shirt. She's like, "Oh, that shirt's so great. Where'd you get it?" And I'm like, someone just threw it at me. Like I made myself look like a complete ass there.
You're really good at that, to be fair.
And you know I bring it up constantly too, so that definitely.
Will the jerseys are they going to be the same, or are they being revamped for each year?
I don't have any idea. My guess is that there will be new jerseys, but I mean that's a guess. You know, like I haven't heard anything specific from Blizzard.
They'll at the very least have a different little patch on here because it says Overwatch 2017. So
right,
and
I would imagine they would at least update that.
Some of the teams might have different sponsors too. Like, cause
right.
like it's T-Mobile for USA, but I think the other ones were, if they didn't have a specific sponsor, they were Omen, and there's a couple other ones I think too.
Yeah, China had a specific sponsor. I can't remember them all.
Yeah, there's it's like the least important part of it too.
I just remember China's because I have a Team China jersey. I'm a big fan of Chinese Overwatch.
Yeah,
to be real, I have it for a long time.
Well, before Overwatch League, it was basically you and Hexagrams were the only people, and now it's literally everyone in the Overwatch League, hoping that Shanghai will get a win.
Well,
yeah, let's not talk about Shanghai.
Yeah,
I think your shirt, Blevin, signed by the Overwatch World Cup team from China, might be more valuable than a Shanghai Dragons jersey signed by the entire team. I'm just saying, it might be a better team. Might be
a better team.
They've won a lot more games.
I mean, well, okay. Shanghai Dragons too much. But
we baited them. Let's hear it.
Yeah.
Shy and Eileen are both not 18 yet and can't play in Overwatch League. But when Shy and Eileen can join that team, like assuming that they do, you know, like I'm just making that up that they're gonna ultimately join that team because it's my hope. But Eileen is crazy, man, and like Shy, both of those guys are really good, and I think would have a huge impact on that team, especially Shy because Lord knows they need some help at support.
I can't wait to hear an entire crowd singing the "Come On Eileen" song, like in unison. Like that's what I want from the Chinese Overwatch scene. It's like the only thing I want from the Chinese Overwatch scene. I don't know that it can't happen, man. If they still haven't won a game by the time the guy gets here, those fans are going to be so in, for whatever reason, they're going to be so in their camp. It's ridiculous.
Okay,
in that arena.
I mean, if you look at Chinese contenders, LGD played in the finals against Lucky Future Zenith, which is an all-Korean team. So, I mean, and I think the finals went 4-3 Lucky Future. So it was a close game for LGD. Like, that's a strong team. And I think if people just sort of discount the Shanghai Dragons because they haven't won a game, they might be surprised next year if they get Shy and Eileen at how much that team is going to turn around.
Yeah, I mean, we've even just seen, I mean, we don't need to go too deep into it, but we've even just seen the Shanghai Dragons like in the past like few weeks like improve, and like they're showing glimpses of actually like having a shot for sure. But question from El Fallas, although this is pretty much already, if you look at the the list of people who've been invited. He just says, did you consider inviting non-OWL players to tryouts? Obviously, that's a yes, but I guess kind of was there anyone that wasn't in Overwatch League or in Contenders that might have been on your radar that was maybe on the cusp of getting an invite, or was it really just kind of OWL and Contenders?
Not really. I think it was mostly OWL and Contenders, and I think there are enough good players at every role that didn't get invited to the tryouts that it wouldn't have really made much sense to look much further than that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could name 3 or 4 people at every position that didn't make the tryouts and I think are good enough. Like, it's sort of a matter of just kind of narrowing down too many good choices.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, one of the challenges of having OWL and Contenders players trying out for the team and trying to work and build that team synergy is that they're in Overwatch League and on Contenders teams that are obviously a big time commitment. Can you tell us how the team is helping them manage that and how the players are managing the balance between the two?
Yeah, we're not going to actually start the tryout, like, scrim matches and, like, really going hardcore until after Overwatch League season has concluded.
Regular season or playoffs?
Playoffs.
Gotcha.
The Contenders season, the next season of Contenders, actually does start pretty quickly. So it kind of gives us a pretty short window to make some key decisions. But, I think we have a talented staff, and I think we'll be able to get the right people on the right teams.
Planning to do any boot camping or anything once the roster is decided and locked up?
Yeah, we've talked about it a little bit. I think we'll probably do something, but I don't really have any specifics to announce.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's got to be at least a little convenient for that a good chunk of the talent is sitting in Burbank right now, like all working in the same area. It's got to help a lot, make that easy.
That's definitely helpful, and I think it's an advantage that we have just that a lot of other countries don't have, right? Like, I don't know about Team Russia, for example, but that's a big country geographically, and the idea that all of their players would be in the same city seems a little unlikely, but, I don't have any insight into that.
I know, like, Custa was talking a little bit about the challenges, wanting to play for Team Australia, and the team obviously wants a player of his caliber to be a part of that, but how do they weigh the fact that he won't be there? And even if he was there, he'd be on, however many 100 ping that he would have. And so it's definitely got to help us that the bulk of the talent pool is in one place here in our country. So.
Yeah, for sure. We'll go with the last one here, which probably can't answer, but that's okay. Pastadactyl says, do you have any insights as to your future plans?
My future plans right now, I'm just focused on Team USA. I think after that and in the coming months, like, I'm hoping to continue my involvement in Overwatch League in some capacity. So I think that will likely happen. But yeah, for right now, I'm just focused on Team USA.
Cool.
Very diplomatic answer. I appreciate it.
I was expecting no comment, and we got more than that, so I'm happy with that. But that is going to wrap it up here for this interview. Bearhands, thanks again for coming on. Any shout outs or anything else that you wanted to say before we let you go?
Just thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the group stages in BlizzCon this year, and hopefully you guys both make it out for BlizzCon and we can hang out some more.
We'll both be at BlizzCon and the finals if you'll be there.
Confirmed. So. We are confirmed for BlizzCon and the finals, so we'll definitely see you. Are you going to grand finals?
I don't think I'm going to be at the grand finals.
Boo! But nonetheless, it's okay because you'll be nose to the grindstone working on the Team USA Overwatch World Cup team. That's where we need you most. So, again, thanks again, Bearhands, for coming on. But that is going to be it for Bearhands. For Deathblow, I'm the Blevins, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.